and they're acting as agents of influence by and large for the CCP within our. This is a militarily powerful, economically powerful, brutally repressive, fascist, genocidal, totalitarian state, a nation of 1.4 billion people that is intent on dominating.
Hi everyone, we have a new guest today on our show. It's Kerry Gershaneck. Nice to see you.
Richard, thank you for having me on the program and the
Thank you so
opportunity to
much
have this discussion.
for your time. And could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, I've been a visiting scholar in Taiwan for a little more than 3 years, and I have worked teaching in universities and worked on with the U.S. military and U.S. government throughout Asia for several decades. And much of my work that I do currently deals with political warfare, the malign influence as conducted by the People's Republic of China against the United States, against Taiwan, and other nations globally.
Good. So my first question would be regarding Taiwan. Obviously, the CCP lost or didn't even gain the souls and hearts of Taiwanese people. So can we see those, PLA Air Force incursions as a next step to intimidate Taiwanese, since obviously there is nothing to discuss and negotiate? Is this a next step up in the warfare?
Well, certainly this is part of the protracted warfare that the Chinese Communist Party has been conducting against initially the Republic of China, starting about 100 years ago on mainland China, what is now the People's Republic of China, but carrying forward today against Taiwan, which is effectively an independent country. So I don't buy just yet that the PRC has given up on the taking Taiwan, annexing Taiwan through political warfare. That is relentless war they are conducting against again Taiwan and the nations of the world. I don't think they're giving up on that, but they are getting frustrated, and the China's rulers are ramping up the military threat side, trying to intimidate during what is a very serious vulnerability window that we have in Washington D.C. right now. They're trying to exploit the opportunity they have over the next several years to intimidate the U.S. and to through military intimidation, through coercion, beyond regular political warfare, to bring in the military component to try to defeat and take over Taiwan.
Obviously, they are conducting media warfare in Taiwan, but I'm also curious, how widespread is it in the West? I mean, obviously, the US and Taiwan would be on the forefront. But what about, let's say, second-tier countries like maybe Poland or smaller countries? Okay, let's say an economic partner like Germany.
Well, you're a target. Poland is a target. In 2018, your Polish press agency signed a cooperation agreement with what would, in effect, Xinhua. And that cooperation agreement is very similar to other agreements that the Chinese Communist Party either coerces or entices media globally to buy into. A large part of that is content sharing. So what you have now is a Trojan horse, one of several, incidentally, into Poland, where these organizations in Poland take basically CCP approved propaganda, put it in your publications, your news media, your broadcasts, your online uh, publications, and it looks like it's being written by trusted Polish reporters. But it's basically what's happening in South America. It's happening in Africa. It's happening in the United States. It's happening throughout Asia, where they're basically just giving a tear sheet to lazy, or there's other ways you can characterize these media organizations. Corrupt is one of them, and they just print it as if they wrote it It's even translated by Xinhua and these other massive propaganda platforms for the particular target country. And so this creates a very insidious, corrosive impact in Poland and of course the other target nations, because slowly your defenses are being corroded from within. It looks like Polish writers are taking the PRC propaganda line. They're broadcasting the CCP's narrative, which incidentally snowballs into Moscow's narrative, especially during the rape of the Ukraine that's ongoing right now. The PRC is loyally, devotedly carrying Moscow's party line. Well, that's coming through your news media, looking like your reporters, Polish reporters, journalists, editorial staff, believe this. So, media warfare poses certainly an existential threat as part of the larger political warfare to Taiwan, but it also poses the same existential threat to my country, the United States, and I would suggest ultimately to the European Union and the members of the EU, and to include Poland.
Yeah, I often wonder a lot of those pro or let's say pro-China voices and experts. They have a lot of support in the comments online, often on YouTube, on and other on other in other media. And I'm wondering, is it really that much effort from China's side that they would even have like a Polish section and people who really post fluently in Polish, and then maybe Chinese Polish language students, and they really have a lot of support and a lot of views, and so it pays off for the hosts to invite them because they get a lot of views and very positive comments.
They don't even care if they get the positive comments. Let me put it in a completely different perspective for you, Richard. China's at war with us.
Yes.
They've been geared up since the 1950s, basically to be at what George Orwell would call perma war. You've studied Marxist theory, you know how the imperialist countries, the capitalist countries, will go through certain phases, and right now they view us as being in the reactionary phase, the very last and most dangerous phase to them. Well, they've been to the communist world, the Marxists. Um, so basically, this is a militarily powerful, economically powerful, brutally repressive, fascist, genocidal, totalitarian state, a nation of 1.4 billion people that is intent on dominating not just Asia, being again the center, the Middle Kingdom, the center of all life and cultural activity and political power in Asia. They want the global hegemony. And so everything in the party state, the integration of private, what we would think of as private industry, the state-owned enterprises, which are run by Communist Party cells, essentially, um, all of this capability, this capacity, manifests itself through the United Front Work Department globally, manifests itself through the liaison department and the political warfare department of the massive People's Liberation Army political warfare effort globally that Poland has not seen since the communists controlled Poland. And even then, what the Russians did and what the collaborators in Poland did was nowhere near as repressive and as comprehensively powerful as the CCP has at its in its hands right now. The capability with social media. Now let's now focus on your opening comments about so many positive comments.
Yes.
Richard, within the PLA alone, the Strategic Support Force, we estimate that at least 300,000 PLA soldiers are dedicated to um, online, whether that's running bots or whether that is commenting on articles, whether it's generating postings. We have at least 300,000 people within the Strategic Support Force who are one way or another associated with that effort. Then we have millions, literally millions, of so-called netizens, either paid or otherwise under the control of the CCP in Beijing, who are engaging on the information battlefield in cyber online and through all of these outlets, their official massive propaganda platforms, but also insidiously through our own news media coming across as just another concerned citizen, pretending to be, their avatars look like you, they look
Yes.
like me. They're pretending to be citizens of the countries that they're writing, where they're writing the comments on the news media article or blasting this particular critic of genocide in against the Uyghurs or genocidal repression in Tibet. All of the critics are under relentless, vicious attack in many cases by these online netizens and by these otherwise agents of the Chinese Communist Party. So we take nothing on face value when you see massive numbers of fake Twitter accounts, fake Facebook accounts, fake book, another commonly accepted name for Facebook these days. You know that in many cases these are directly part of the Chinese Communist Party propaganda, disinformation, and coercion effort.
So even in other languages, let's say not only in English, but let's say Polish, German, French, there is also more than enough of them. Yes.
It's a country of 1.4 billion people. You don't get a job, you don't
Yes.
keep a job if you're a Polish speaker who's graduated from one of their international relations universities, or you're told you're going to learn Polish. Put it that way at the beginning of your education. There's several different ways that they get all these speakers, but they've got a massive talent pool, and they go out worldwide with the Thousand Talents program and other programs to recruit people, whether that's through the United Front Work Department, whether that's through the MSS, the Ministry of State Security, or the PLA liaison, Department of Political Warfare effort. There's many manifestations of the Chinese Communist Party political warfare effort that you don't even see in your country, but they're there. The state-owned enterprises, the ones that have contracts, that Polish firms have lucrative contracts with. Well, if you want to keep that contract, and I'll use my own country as an example, Boeing, if you want to keep that contract, you will stop funding this
Yeah.
particular think tank, which has been critical of the People's Republic of China. You will do this, you will do A, B, C, and D. And by and large, many of the those under attack by the Chinese Communist Party will toe the line. And we see that routinely through Marriott. We see it routinely through so many other corporations globally that you stepped across the line by allowing an employee to tweet. The National Basketball Association, for example, which is literally disgustingly down on its knees, kowtowing before the Chinese Communist Party. They are reprimanding and punishing their own employees who are standing up for freedom, human rights, and rule of law just to gain billions of dollars in lucrative contracts in NBA games being shown or being played in the People's Republic of China. It's vile, it's repulsive, it's repugnant, and it's a very real problem that we need to deal with. We have our own fifth column in the form of a lot of business people who are making a lot of money off the genocide in China, off the brutal repression in China. And
So what could we do? Let's say either like if we are kind of experts on China, or if you're just interested in China, what could regular people do to kind of go against those influencers and they decrease their influence? I think it's getting worse and more difficult for them to promote China, especially in recent maybe few years. But still, what can we do to to cope with that problem?
we've got a short period of time, and I'll be self serving here for a moment and say one, get educated. This is
Okay.
one book that I have published, and I'm covering my face on purpose. So you can possibly put a link to
Yes.
political warfare strategies for combating China's plan to win without fighting. And then on the media warfare side, where I've taken a deep dive into one of the three pillars of China's political warfare, which is media warfare. In addition, that's in addition to psychological warfare and the all the other elements of unrestricted warfare. Oh, by the way, it's a much broader war they're fighting against us. But so read up on it, learn, participate, listen to your programs because you a number of people you interview go into this from various very important aspects, various angles of beyond what I'm taking it through. Learn about it. There's a chapter in each one of the two books that I talked about. The last one being Media Warfare: Taiwan's Battle for the Cognitive Domain, that go into very detailed recommendations on how you can develop the across society capability that is growing. Incidentally, in Poland, you see more articles exposing the CCP's effort to again support Moscow in the rape of the Ukraine and to support PRC narratives regarding COVID-19, et cetera. And within the United States, there's now many more organizations writing openly about the insidious effect of the PRC's political warfare and corroding at the subnational level our country, of corroding our society through unrestricted warfare. There's something called drug warfare, one of the 24 unrestricted warfares in the book that came out in 1999 by two political warfare colonels from the People's Liberation Army Air Force. Drug warfare through, for example, fentanyl flooding our southern border, our open southern border, incidentally, and it's killing more than 100,000 Americans annually now. It's designed to subvert our society through basically chemical warfare, drug warfare. So learning about this is a first step. Getting elected officials who take action on it in a democracy is absolutely crucial. That's the next big step, is getting people who will actually take action. I've met people who are willfully blind. You can present these facts to these policymakers, to these elected officials. You can tell them what's going on, but for their own political or other interests, they refuse to take action. That's not who we need in office. It's not who we need driving, in our case, the U.S. State Department to actually develop a strategy like we had developed back in the Cold War, back in the late 1940s, to counter the Soviet Union's political warfare. That's why ultimately Poland became free of communist dictatorship. Is we actually had a pretty effective way of fighting, and Poland was in the forefront of it, even
Yes.
under occupation. You were in the forefront of the counter political warfare battle against Russia, against Moscow. That's what we need to build. Again, we need to build strategies. We need to build leaders who understand the threat and then will take action to detect it, deter it, to counter it, and then ultimately defeat it. We cannot continue to let the Chinese Communist Party conduct perma war against us, using the Orwellian term. They cannot be allowed to continue because eventually they will subvert, wear us down. That's just the nature of democracies. They get tired after a while. So we need a concerted effort like we had during the Cold War, patient effort, but a concerted effort to fight back and win in this political war that's being waged against us.